property. Okay, in the U.S. we enjoy excellent property rights, and don't think of property strictly as real estate. Property includes other things, your vehicles, your clothes, your whatever else, your textbooks. Property also includes things like you have property rights if you're leasing a place. Okay, and so property rights extend beyond sometimes what we normally think. And in the U.S., we say that property rights, private, right, exclusive, can be rights and resources, things. It can be intangible things like a patent, right, or a copyright. Okay, owners can possess or transfer, and to a certain extent, anyhow, prevent interference. And I've got one article that I posted that kind of goes against that a little bit, where the federal government did interfere with property rights, but maybe to enforce other rights or other things that were important, for the government, and to a certain extent, we'll talk about easements and those types of things as we go along. There's a whole chapter on property later, and so I don't want to get into too many details here, but it is a basis for a private market. Again, nations that have prospered economically generally have good private rights for ownership of property, and nations where they don't have those rights, where property is more collectively owned, seem to not do as well. Russia maybe would be a good example there. It's a type of legal fence, right? And it keeps others out. Okay, and most people don't do that, to that large of an extent, right? When you drive through Havre, you don't see big fences or moats, around people's homes that are absolutely trying to keep people out. Yeah, but they could, right? As long as it fit within, zoning requirements and those types of things, and restrictive covenants, you could build a fence and you could put up a big sign that says "Stay the hell out." Okay, we can do that. Typically we don't. We tend to be a little more neighborly than that. So property in a broad sense, right? Ownership rights are conveyed to individuals. Of course, companies too are considered basically like individuals, and they're constitutional. So property rights, in our case, come to us from the Constitution. It generally excludes the state from the interference, and again, there's going to be plenty of exceptions to this, and we'll talk about those, but property is considered a liberty, a right, something that we hold very, very dearly here in the U.S. I had an article there. Property rights owners can keep others from interfering through police and courts. Again, for the most part, this was a story about the Carter Bar, and there was rumors that it might become a strip club, and the rumors were kind of unfounded, and yet there was an article in there, and the town of Carter was a little upset, about the fact. I mean, Carter's this little, kind of a bedroom community for Great Falls, and they don't want strip joints out there. They're raising their kids hopefully to be good honest citizens and whatnot, and they don't want them hanging around a strip club maybe, and or knowing even that it was there, and it turns out it was much ado about nothing, but it expresses that communities and whatnot can put those types of restrictions on there. For example, we don't allow bars within a certain distance of schools or churches, actually, here in the United States. Okay, and that's just because we think that that's a common sense thing. Property rights do definitely provide incentive for development. We're all encouraged oftentimes to obtain property, to get it, to own it, to maintain it, to keep it. Okay, and that definitely gives us incentive. It also gives us a way to accumulate capital. Okay, in other words, the fact that we can have property rights, we can invest in real estate, we can invest in other types of property, which might include stocks and bonds, say, for example, or certainly properties, and it allows us to accumulate capital, which becomes very, very important for economic development. Okay. something we've already kind of said. So property, again, in a broad sense, it's a central concept underlying the Western legal system. So isn't that amazing that it's we take it for granted, here in the U.S. and you go into Canada too. We take it for granted the property rights that we enjoy, but there's probably a minority of people in the world. There's certainly a minority of people in the world that enjoy property rights, even close to what we enjoy here in the U.S. So it's pretty key. It's pretty crucial to our economic well-being. Acquisition of resources. Ways we can do that, and again, some of these we'll cover in more thorough detail when we get to property, but certainly through a gift, right? Exchange. We talk a lot about exchanges in business, okay? And basically trading, buying, whatever, bartering, whatever the case may be. A cession is adding something to something else, and then it becomes a part of a property. I suppose you could say if you bought a lot even, and then you built a house on it, technically the house becomes a part of the lot, right? And you would own the house then as a result. Confusion, fungible assets we can obtain property, I guess, kind of through confusion, sort of. Again, we'll talk about that more thoroughly. Adverse possession is when you obtain property or property rights. This has a lot to do more with easements and those types of things. And again, we'll talk about that. First possession and original possession. I don't really distinguish a lot between those, but think creators of art, writers of music, writers of books, those types of things, right? Somebody maybe that invents a machine, somebody that invents or finds a drug, that's good for cancer or something like that, right? There's ownership rights in those. So just some nice quotes, right? Private property begins with the right we have in ourselves and our efforts and actions. So again, we're talking about original first possession, things like that, creation maybe. Property in its larger and juster meaning embraces everything which a man may attach value and have a right. So it's very broad. That's why we call it in a broad sense, right? Let's pause there.
Or the Colonial Pipeline is shut down in these major